What's going on, everybody? Top 10 Pokemon back, bringing you the top Pokemon card auctions of the week recap. As always, a tremendous variety of auctions to go through. On this week's recap, we will be talking about the highly elusive and very expensive cards from the Topps Chrome series. Specifically, the Techno cards in PSA 10 made quite a splash this week. And we're also going to talk about what might be an underrated grading card company with a few sales that we've seen the past week or two. So stay tuned for all that and more. Folks, today's Pokemon card auctions recap is sponsored by lowpopping.com, your source for investment-worthy Pokemon cards. Check out the newly designed lowpopping.com, where they have an absolutely massive inventory of Pokemon cards listed for sale. This website is fine-tuned, so you can filter exactly what you're looking for in little to no time. Lowpopping.com is home to some truly unique grails that you simply can't find anywhere else, with enough high-end PSA, BGS, and CGC graded cards to make any collector's mouth water. And yes, you can still trade, make offers, or sell to them through the Instagram Messenger or email. And they also have buy now, pay later options also through Instagram or email. And they still ship worldwide and accept multiple payment methods. Community, you gotta make sure you go check out lowpopping.com's insane Pokemon card inventory. Right after you're done watching the recap, of course. A link to their website will be in the description below, and as always, I appreciate it when you let me know what you picked up. Alright folks, as always, I got lots of eye candy for you in this week's recap. Let's get started off with Modern, as we always do, starting off with some Paldea Evolved in this Raichu illustration rare card that sold in auction this week for $305. And some people, I believe, feel like Paldea Evolved is a slept-on set. And I was not too sure about this particular auction. I mean, you can buy this card now for $300, so it's not out of the realm of possibilities that an auction price goes for more than a buy it now price. It's happened numerous times in the past, but this is the first time I've seen this Raichu sell on a PSA 10 in auction. And then we had several BGS 10 Black Label cards come through. Most of these are the higher pop BGS 10 Black Labels. Here we have the Magikarp Art Rare. This is one of the most black labeled copies of the past year, sold for $660. We saw this Giratina V-Star as a black label sell for $550. Here is the Charizard VMAX from Shining Fates as a black label that sold for $1,276. Here we have the Pikachu Character Rare from Dream League that sold for $808.87. Here we have a Japanese Rainbow Rare Mew VMAX as a black label sold for $430. Up next we have a PSA 10 Mewtwo promo from the HR competition that sold for $1,500 this week. And then here we had a Zekrom GX SR competition promo card in PSA 10 that sold for $4,550. And then this is very interesting, folks. This was a lot. There were 3 lots of the Shiny Charizard V cards from Shiny Star V, each lot containing about 12 PSA 10 copies. This first lot here sold for about $1,030. The other lot here sold for about $1,225, and the third lot also sold for $1,225. So if you don't know, this card typically sells in auction for about $150 by itself. So if you talk about getting 12 of these at $150, that's about $1,800. So, I mean, you can make a quick buck selling these individually. What do y'all think? Really good deal? On to some interesting vintage cards. Here we have a first edition Yellow Cheeks Pikachu from base set. This looks to be a gray stamp variant in PSA 10, sold for $1,480 this week. Here we have a BGS 9 Pikachu promo card with the inverted stamp. Like we were talking about last week, I think we saw a Dragonite card sell. This week, this card sold for $3,500. We have a CGC 6.5 Mewtwo promo card from the WotC era, also with the inverted stamp, that sold for $1,111.11. That's an awful lot of ones in that price. Here we have a PSA 10 No Symbol Scyther Holo from Jungle set that sold for $859. Also from Jungle was this Unlimited Nidoqueen Holo in PSA 10 that sold for $306. And am I the only one out there that thinks that PSA 10 Unlimited WotC Holos are a little bit underrated? Anybody else think that? Up next, we saw the lineup from Team Rocket set, the first edition Charmander, Charmeleon, and first edition Dark Charizard, all in PSA 10, sold for $3,250. From Neo Destiny, we saw a first edition Light Togetic, one of the most difficult cards to grade from that set in PSA 10, sold for $1,480. And also from Neo Destiny, we saw the criminal price of this PSA 10 first edition Miracle Energy that sold for $136. Crazy. That is dirt cheap for a PSA 10 first edition WotC Holo, even if it's an energy card. We saw this Charizard Holo from Platinum Arceus in PSA 10 that sold for $1,175 this week. Along with this Platinum Arceus Level X card, also in PSA 10, that sold for $850. From Call of Legends, we saw this beautiful Rayquaza Holo, the SL10 copy that sold for $4,605. And then here is that batch of Topps Chrome cards I was telling you about. And I always get confused when I see these cards between which is the most rarest. It's like I think it's the Spectra, and then the Sparkle, and then the Techno is the most rare. Just keep that in mind as we go through these cards. Here we have a Techno Onyx in PSA 10 that sold for an even $600 US. And then here is a Techno Lapras in PSA 10, sold for $2,072 US. Here we have a Sparkle Ghastly card in PSA 10 that sold for $1,711. And then we had the Techno version sell for $1,711 as well. Here we have the Sparkle Haunter card that sold for $1,886, while the Techno version sold for $2,405. And last but certainly not least, we have the Gengar Sparkle card from the Topps Chrome series, selling for $9,692 US. Holy crap. So what do y'all think of these Topps Chrome cards, folks? Are you a big fan? I was never into them. I can acknowledge how low pop these Techno cards are and how difficult they are to get in those grades, but I would never pay this much for these Topps cards because they're just not my cup of tea. What do y'all think of them? A couple pieces of sealed product that I found very interesting. Here is a black and white Noble Victories booster box, sold for $2,075. And then we had a lineup of first edition Dutch booster boxes. Here is a first edition Dutch Jungle booster box, sold for $5,767. The first edition Dutch Fossil box sold for $6,255. And then the Dutch first edition base set box sold for $13,800. Not booster boxes you see come by very often. And then onto the weekly PWCC auction block, we have an Ampharos Holo from Secret Wonders in PSA 10, a Pop 8 card that sold for $1,530. Here we have a PSA 10 Full Art Lycia from the Sky Splitting Charisma set that sold for $2,190. And then here we have more Topps cards. Here's a PSA 10 Sparkle Bulbasaur card, a Pop 9 card that sold for $1,650. And then here we have a Spectra Mew card in CGC 10 perfect condition that sold for $1,890. And then here is a PSA 10 Spectra Charizard card that sold for $2,250. A couple of Japanese crystal cards. Here's a Crystal Celebi in PSA 10 that sold for $2,760, along with the Japanese Crystal Ho-Oh that sold for an even $3K. And we can't forget the Japanese Gold Star Rayquaza that sold this week for $9,300. And this week we saw all three of the legendary burns in their Tropical Mega Battle phone card variants. Here we have a PSA 9 Moltres sold for $4,920, a PSA 10 Zapdos phone card sold for $8,100, and the PSA 10 Articuno sold for $9,300. And then here's where it gets very interesting, folks. We have the Crystal Charizard. This is the Japanese crystal variant that sold this past week as a PSA 10 for $9,600, while the first edition copy of this card sold for $10,200. Now what's very interesting is that this week we also saw an SGC 10 copy of this card. It was the non-first edition copy that sold for $6,133. So my question to you folks, is that underrated? Is this SGC 10 copy that looks pretty good according to the scans, was that an underrated sale? Should I have picked that up? Was that a piece of gold there that we have missed? Because this card used to sell about a year ago as a PSA 10 for $40,800. That was a crazy sale for this card. And this week, this card sold for $3,500 less than the PSA 10 copy did. What do y'all think of that? Because if we also look back to last week's sale of the Latios Gold Star in SGC 10, where it sold for $4,800, while the PSA 10 copy sold for a month prior to that at $38,400, which is 8 times as much as the SGC 10. So, yeah, what do you think, folks? SGC 10 vintage cards, are they very underrated? I think in this instance, yes. With the Latios Gold Star, I think that was a very underrated purchase. I think that whoever got it for $4,800 last week got it for an absolute steal. Let me know what you think of SGC. I know we got a lot of SGC collectors in this community. Give me your comments below. We also saw the Crystal Lugia come by again in PSA 10 that sold for $11,100. And the auction of the week, I gotta give to this BGS 9.5 Umbreon Gold Star promo card. This is the 70,000 point promo card that sold for an even $60,000. Thank you so much for watching, folks. Please let the comments start flowing about the Techno cards, about the SGC cards, about this Umbreon Gold Star card that hit $60,000. I want to know what you think. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to go check out lowpopping.com. I'm sure they got something good for you over there. That's all I got today, folks. Thanks again. I'll catch you all in my next one.